Good afternoon, ladies.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to the Higher Black Summit. This session is Beating Imposter Syndrome. We're going to talk about providing tactics to overcome the psychological pattern in which we doubt our accomplishments and talent due to internalized fear. And I know this is something that we've probably all dealt with, if not now, will deal with in the future. So I know we have a host of other ladies that are joining us, or people and allies that are joining us at the event today. So I want to introduce you to this awesome panel of ladies. I was reading everybody's bios, and I literally had to pick my jaw up off the desk because you guys are some phenomenal women who definitely I'm excited to talk to and learn from, and I'm sure everybody on the call is too. So I'm going to introduce you guys, and if you want to just tell the people a little bit about yourself, and I would also like for you to say your favorite city in the U.S. to visit and why, because I think this may give us a little understanding of your personality and your favorite places to travel that we might have people on the call that live in that area. So first up, we're going to introduce you to Abiola Jeremiah. She's the Executive Director, Global HR of the Estee Lauder Company. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, as Chanel said, my name is Aviola Jeremiah. I work at the Estee Lauder Companies. I've got a dual role, actually. One half of my role is I'm the head of HR for our global corporate functions. And then I'm also the program lead for our racial equity commitments that, Estee Lauder, amongst a lot of other companies back in June, released these commitments. And so my job is to ensure that we deliver on those commitments. So, favorite US city to travel to? I would have to say Chicago. And the reason I picked Chicago is it's actually really personal. My best friend lived there for a while. And one of my favorite memories is my now husband, but at the time we were dating, I was living in Pennsylvania. He was here in New York, and we were just obsessed with the Obamas. And he found this restaurant in Chicago where apparently they go every year for Valentine's Day. And so he was determined that we're going to go to this restaurant and made a reservation. And we took the train from New York to Chicago to go to this restaurant with the hope of seeing them. But we did not see them. And so Chicago holds a really dear place in my heart because I have such fond memories. And favorite place to travel, love to travel, have been to over 35 different countries. I think one of the places that is just always near and dear to my heart, love the Maldives because it's just a place where you go and you literally can be alone. You have like an island to yourself, and it's just an opportunity to de-stress, relax, and truly, truly disconnect. And the people there always take me back to a time of like just simpler times. And so it's a place that, I always say probably more than a week, you might get bored out of your head. But for a week, if you want to just disconnect, it's a place that I love.
Awesome. Thank you, Abiola. We're so excited to have you on the panel. Coming up next, Candace Montgomery. If you'll introduce yourself and tell us your favorite city to travel to. Candace is the VP of Experiential for Essence, so we're very excited to have you here.
Thank you, Chanel. And hi, everybody. As Chanel mentioned, I am the Vice President of Experiential for Essence. And essentially what that means is I'm responsible for the day-to-day function, how we show up in the live pre-COVID, as well as how we show up digitally in terms of our experiences. That is inclusive of all of our special events, including at the festival, the Essence Festival, which you may or may not have heard of. It's a very interesting job. I have had the pleasure of doing it for some time. And it's constantly evolving. It's constantly challenging in terms of technology and innovation and trying to be first to market. But to your second question, in terms of my favorite city, I've had the pleasure of spending a lot of time in New Orleans, obviously, as it's connected to the festival. And it is my favorite domestic city. It has everything that you want: food, music, culture. It's a walkable city. And it is just a beautiful place to go when you don't want to go too far and you still want to go and have a really good time. You literally have to be asleep to not have a good time.
That's so true. I've had many days in New Orleans. Thank you, Candace. Excited to hear from you today. And then Grace Uma Cabezas. She's the VP of Growth Marketing and the founder of The Skim. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us your favorite U.S. city to travel to.
Sure, I'm Grace, and just a small correction, I'm not founder of The Skim, but just so there's no, I
was about to say, wow.
I'm sorry, I read it correctly.
No worries at all. No worries at all, Chanel. So I'm VP of Growth Marketing at The Skim. So I lead the helm on audience growth, engagement, and retention across our platforms, and just how we engage with consumers and impacting more and more millennial women. So that's sort of the helm that I take up. I'm founder of Fields, which is a really simple platform for professionals of color to share our real experiences at work. So you can fill out a confidential survey about past or current employers. You can share your professional narrative anonymously. And that's been born out of this moment. It's been in the world for about 3 months, and just continuing to want to kind of grow that community and impact there. And I've just been, in the digital marketing space for about 15 years, despite my youthful appearance. And my favorite place, my favorite domestic city is New York. To visit is New York. I live in New York, but due to the pandemic, I feel like I have not been able to really visit it. And it's probably my favorite place in the US. So
Cool. Very interesting perspective. So yeah, this panel today, we're going to talk about how sometimes we can let our self-limiting beliefs kind of hinder us or hold us back from progression in our career development or even our personal lives at times. And I know that looks different for each of us and you guys, especially in the different journeys that you've had in your career. So I would like to hear a little bit about what any of your self-limiting beliefs look like, or some early warning signs for you that you noticed that there were some things you needed to tend to in order to take care of you. So Grace, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that self-limiting beliefs had manifested for me was just overall, just, when you kind of feel diminished or you don't feel like you can occupy a space fully, that's going to influence the way that you present. It's going to influence the way that you take up space. And I think that was the thing that for me, for my career development, was a big unlock for me when I could unlearn this idea that I didn't deserve to be there and understand that it was impacting how I was able to engage with other people, how I was able to present, how I was able to kind of share my own narrative. I had this idea that it was like I was missing these pieces, but like the thing I was missing was like my belief that I had the pieces. You know what I mean? It's like that's the thing that was missing. So it really came alive when I was able to kind of unpack that. I noticed sort of the career trajectory become stronger, and I was able to kind of connect those dots more easily when I kind of believe that in myself. But yeah, so literally how I took up space in the room, how I didn't take up space in the room was probably how it manifested most strongly for me.
And did you feel like that was early on in your career, or kind of, later towards the middle, or where you are now, or is it throughout?
I think the feeling of not feeling like I can take up full space.
Right.
I feel like it's throughout, but it's taken different forms as I progress in my career. So maybe early in my career, I didn't feel like I had the right skills to contribute to a project. I still would, but I didn't really have the confidence. And then as I progressed, it was sort of like, oh, now I'm at the board meeting. It's like at each layer, there's an element of that for me that has manifested as I moved on, and you sort of unlock different levels of visibility and access. You know what I mean? I think that for me, at least, I feel like you're always going to struggle with a bit of that anytime you sort of up level in some way. So it's something that's followed me, but I feel like as I'm intentionally working on it has helped me hack my way through it as I moved up.
Right. Yeah, I completely understand. And Candace, how does that look for you?
Sure. I think when I was younger,
I think you muted yours.
Right. I think when I was younger, I didn't have, I was more bold and brazen. I didn't have that, like a newborn, you don't have that have any kind of barrier of entry. So you're just kind of like, okay, I'm here, whatever. But as I've gone along, as I've moved through my career and I get to, more senior spaces, you have that, oh, should I, you step into a room and you're like, oh, should I speak? Should I offer my opinion? Do they really want to hear from me? Or maybe you take this place of, should I sit back and just listen? But really, quite honestly, the reason why you're asked to be in the room is because people want to hear what you have to say. And so a lot of times we get in this position where we want to sit there and we kind of want to be a fly on the wall. And people have invited you to the meeting. They've invited you to the space because they want to hear your position, your perspective. And it takes a lot of, self-work to understand that, like my voice is valid. And, I'm just not, they don't really want you to just sit there and just kind of be a fly on the wall, because they may not invite you back.
Right. And I think that's a very interesting perspective, because I know at different points or levels in our career, we feel comfortable doing that. And then at some point we don't. So I know we have women of many different levels and stages in their career here. So from an intern perspective or from an executive perspective, how do you pick and choose, or at what points do you begin to feel comfortable choosing where and when your opinion is valid or needed, or when you feel comfortable doing so?
I think culturally we get very caught up in labels and who is, oh, I'm going to this meeting. Let me see who's going to be there. And then you think, oh, I have all of these people. Maybe I should just sit here and listen, or just take it all in. But quite honest, I'm telling you, people are inviting you to a space because they value what it is that you have to say, but also your perspective from where you are in your career. And they want to have you contribute, not just sit there and be a fly on the wall.
Right, right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Abiola, what is your perspective?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think when I listened to Candace, for me, I had a little of the opposite, in that when I was younger in my career, I would not speak up. I remember, first coming out of graduate school and being in this phenomenal leadership development program. And the design of the program was to give you stretch assignments. And I was typically the youngest, most junior person in the room. And I sort of saw myself as a sponge. I was so afraid of making a mistake and saying the wrong things, right? And I remember it was a Black woman who took me aside one day and said, you are super smart. When you do speak, people listen, right? And so she said, I went through the same thing. And how I helped myself get through it is, I said, in every meeting, I'm going to make sure I have two things that I say. I'm going to prepare before. And I started doing that. And then over time, it became easier for me. Similarly, like Candace said, it was about recognizing that I am here because I have value to add, right? And one thing that really has worked for me throughout my career, when I find myself in situations where I'm beginning to have self-doubt, right? Whether it's, starting a role and feeling like, I don't know if I can do all of this. They're asking so much of me. What if I fail, right? I always take a step back. And I developed this a couple years ago. I have these 3 L's, right? Which is around, what can I lead, right? What are my strengths? And so I'm going to lean into those and lead. What can I learn? Because I'm not going to know everything. And being comfortable in that, right? Being comfortable in it's okay to not know everything. And sometimes that can really be the piece that limits us, because we think, well, I don't know this. People are going to think I'm not worthy, that I'm a fake, right? And I also look at it as, if I'm the smartest person in the room, if I know everything, then I'm not pushing myself, I'm not challenging myself, and I'm probably in the wrong room. So just being a sponge and a lifelong learner. And then who can I leverage, right? So again, we're not going to know everything. And there are people around you for a reason who you can partner with and may be experts in areas that you may feel like you don't have as much information, right? So how do you leverage those individuals and you have that kind of shared relationship where you can lean on each other? And that's what's really worked for me. But I think it's just pushing through that need to feel like I have to be perfect. I don't want to make a mistake. I mean, I am still to this day, I am mortified when I make mistakes, right? And I have to go through my mental stages of, girl, you're human. It is okay, right? No one died. We'll be all right.
Yeah, and I love that you talked a little bit on confronting that self-limiting belief. But at the same time, we know that doubt always comes from a place of something impacting you to the point where you were either told or you began to believe whatever it is that you're believing about yourself. So has there ever been a time where you had a self-limiting belief, but then someone else contributed to it in a negative way and not a positive at the point that you tried to push through it?
Uh, yes. I actually have an example of something. So this is a couple years ago. I started a new role, and the role for me was different. It was truly new. It involved leading union negotiations. I had never done that. As part of my, kind of the interview through my 18 or so interviews that I had, they were aware that this was an area that I just, hadn't really had the experience in, but I had a lot of other experiences that they really wanted to bring into the organization and the capabilities that they wanted to build on. But for me, it was kind of like, I've never done this, right? So in the back of my head, that's the piece that I was holding on to. And I could never forget when I walked into the room, kind of my first meeting with the site union lead person from the union. And she took a look at me. It's this, older white woman. And she took a look at me and she said, "What are you, 12?" And I immediately felt like, and she just started laughing, right? And there was like three women and they just kind of started laughing. And I immediately felt like I wanted the earth to just open up and swallow me. And I was about 34 at the time, right? So I was a grown woman, had been in my role, in my career for over a decade. And I just remember saying, no, this is you got to push through this. And I just, smiled and said, I was like, no, actually I'm not, but I just have really good genes, right? And so after that meeting, I remember I went back and I was so livid. And it was everything of oh my God, these people are going to discover that I've never done this before. And the next time I kind of took that step back, and that's actually where I came up with my 3 L's around, lead, learn, and leverage. And I was like, okay, what do I bring to this, right? What can I lead? And I started, honing in on, I've got the great collaboration skill, the consultative skills. I'm a strategic thinker. I can get things done, right? So I wrote everything down. I'm like, what can I learn? Well, I can learn the handbook, right? I can learn how to do this. And who can I leverage? I had a colleague who actually worked for me who was phenomenal at that. So we spent a lot of time together. And so the next time I met with them, it's so funny because I purposely wore a red suit, left my hair out curly, and I walked into that room like I owned it. And I said, okay, so let's talk about how we're going to work together moving forward. And I was so nervous because, again, I was I just kept thinking about the fact that I've really never led union negotiations. And they're already looking at me like, who's this little young girl? And oh, by the way, she comes from a pure corporate background. She has not done this type of work, right? And I had to push through. And for me, it was, I'm not going to let them win. I'm not going to let whatever they may think have me self-doubt myself even more. And I'm going to show that I can do this. And not only can I do this, I can do this extremely well. And I did. And so it did take a lot, it wasn't that easy, right? Because it was a lot of driving home and talking to myself and doing my research and saying, no. At the end of the day, what do I want to be able to walk away from this experience saying? And it really worked out. I mean, I built a phenomenal relationship with them. We decreased our grievances and everything really worked out well. So it does happen.
Awesome. Well, I think you had definitely a great testimony. And I know a lot of us can relate to those moments where you try to push through and then somebody else is kind of contributing to pulling you back. Candace, I saw you nodding your head over there. Do you have an example where you tried to kind of push forward and there was a roadblock or something that tried to hold you back?
I mean, I think that if you're going to go through this world as a professional, you're going to have, this is going to happen to you. You either are going to figure out how you're going to move forward or you're going to let it kind of take you over. So I've had this happen to me many times. I've had, people try to control my narrative and, try to, if a specific example, I've had an experience where, I have more experience in a particular area than, say my senior lead or my direct report, the person that I report to. And, you often, that also creates an interesting dynamic too, right? Because then, this other person feels like they may, they may feel a little threatened by your experience, and they feel like they need to put you in your place. And so it's a constant of kind of, you are less than, or you are not going to measure up. And so you in a daily kind of like crawl of stepping out of a hole. And so you have to be really resolute in, I know what I'm doing. I am, very experienced in my job. And, that, if they're presented a narrative where, it's something like Abiola mentioned that, this is an area where I'm not familiar. It's really important for you to double down in making sure you either research what you don't know and align with people that do know. So you're having allies in areas where you need to learn, and where you can kind of lean into that experience and talk through and have somebody to help you through it, but also do your research. So what people can't take away from you is knowledge. And so a lot of times, you have to really just kind of arm yourself with the information, the intelligence, and, but also allyship to help you through those situations. And, a lot of it is how you put it all together to take yourself into meeting and basically deliver what it is that you have to say. And you have to just really stay on topic and really just be, okay, if I don't know it, then I'm going to learn it, ask questions, and then really just push through. No one is really asking you to know everything all the time. And because if they did, how everyone has been where you are, and they're learning to get to the next step. And so I think that's kind of like this false, this kind of like false magical place where I'm going to hire someone and she knows everything. It isn't the case. And so I think for us, we have to be gentle with ourselves and say, there are opportunities where I need to learn. There are opportunities where I need to align, find an ally, a mentor, a sponsor, and then push through all of those situations with those things like your armor to get through.
Yeah, and you said a word that I want to hang on for a minute, a couple of minutes ago, the word community. And I know how important it is. I know we always say it takes a village to raise kids. It takes a community to be a woman in this day and age, to be a woman of color and to be successful. And so how do you develop a community of people who are supportive and impactful to your journey in whatever way that you choose to go as your career develop? Yeah, that's for you.
Oh, sorry. So I have developed a community throughout my career, and I still lean into some of the same people from the early parts of my career for different things. And, a lot of times I've seen where I've been fortunate where I have had a lot of community in my career, but I have also seen people trying to box themselves where I'm the only one who knows this thing, or I'm not going to help this person. And I've never been that person. And you never ever know when you need somebody. When you need someone, you may want to leave a company and get a job someplace else, and the person you treated like is someplace else and is in next to that hiring role. Like, it's important for you not to burn bridges, but somebody comes to you and says, do you have a few minutes? Someone, junior to you says, I want to learn about your career. Do you have a few minutes? And you blow them off and you tell them you don't have time. And in 3 years, there are three levels above you, and you need them to help you get into the role, into the next, company. This is community. This is you allowing yourself to mentor someone in not just because you want something in return, but because that's how you help people. That is our culture, to pull up people, take people along, but then also making alliances with senior level women who have been above me to help me navigate, kind of any type of situations that I've been in where I, need a little guidance, and need a little help, or even help me decide, you need to talk to this person, or this is kind of how you should handle this situation. It's really important for you to have, community allyship in different areas of the community, and maybe not necessarily just in your job, but also just in your industry as well as throughout your career. It's really important to do that, and to also want to help someone so that, when you need it, they're not turning your back on you.
Right. And I think that's awesome advice because I know as we go along, there's some people we feel in competition with, but a lot of times there's a lot of greatness that comes from working together and having that community. So, Grace, with you being the founder of your company, The Field, what are some of the maybe self-limiting beliefs that you had along your way to entrepreneurism? And then how did you kind of work to make sure that you did not let those things take you over into not doing what you wanted to do?
Sure. I think just in general, when I was founding Field and was inspired to found Field, I was at a crossroads professionally. I'd been one of the millions of people that lost their job around COVID. I was looking at full-time opportunities and very thankful to have landed at the Skim. And I probably, if not for this moment that we're living in 2020, or where I had the sort of the self-work I had done and understanding where I could contribute, what my value was, I wouldn't have probably even started Field. You know what I mean? Like that in itself was like kind of like a manifestation, I think, of where I'd come in terms of where I understood what my benefit could be. So it's been an exercise over the years, and so much of what everybody is saying, Abiola Candace, is like just on point. But it's been a process for me over the years to understand my own narrative, owning my own narrative, understanding my natural talents, understanding where I add and how I add the most value, and being able to look at a problem, look at a situation, look at an organization, look at an opportunity, and really owning and understanding that. And that was just the brainchild of Field, because I was like, I've always been a storyteller. I'm a marketer by profession. I'm a storyteller. I'm a content creator. I'm a big believer in community building. I believe in giving people space and platform to share their stories in real life and virtually. That's energy I carry into every space. I've learned that those kind of soft skills, quote unquote, were like the things that make me special and unique as a leader. And that was all the things I was able to pour into Field, just to simply create a platform for sharing and to create narrative and to share content that can be impactful, that can be empowering, that can be inspiring. So really, to me, it's kind of like this. And I've actually had to come sort of work through some imposter syndrome too when I talk about Field as well. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, it's a project. It's a this, it's a that. I would sometimes forget to mention, and people are like, why don't you mention this thing that you're doing? I'm like, oh yeah, I also do. Like, so even this, so even that, even just sharing that story and sharing, creating that platform has been a part of that development for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll open this question to any of you because I know a lot of times we try to keep professional and personal life separate, but in a lot of ways we run into instances where what's going on professionally affects us personally and vice versa. So when you're dealing with doubt or self-doubt or just different challenges or dilemmas that you're going through in your career or your life, how do you either keep those things separate, or do most times it's a combination of the two things happening as to why you're feeling how you're feeling? And I'll open that to any of you.
I'll go ahead and start off. I think for me, it's definitely a combination. Like, I think those same dynamics just follow. For me personally, I've seen those dynamics follow across my relationships. And, your work is also a place where you build relationships. So I think that those are definitely been threads. The things that I've employed, one way that's manifested, I think probably a little bit more in my personal life in terms of my imposter syndrome that I continue to conquer is, I found myself, like, one of the first things I mentioned about diminishment is how it manifested professionally, particularly early in my career. But I would do that same thing with people that were close to me. Like, I would be hesitant to share my wins. I wouldn't talk about these things that I had because I thought, like, number one, I didn't want to make anyone feel bad, because I'm a big empath, probably too empathetic. And then, but when I really dug a little deeper, it was because, like, I didn't really believe I deserved that recognition. That's what was motivating me to be hesitant of sharing it. Like, it's a much better story to say, like, I don't want to make people feel bad or I don't want to brag. But what was underneath that was, like, I didn't feel worthy of this thing that I just got. You know what I mean? Like I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. So I put into practice, like when things happen that I'm proud of, that excite me, like I share it with my circle first, because luckily my circle are the most support, like my family supportive, my friends are supportive. You know what I mean? People look up to me in my family, people look up to me in my community, and that means something, you know what I mean? And I have to show up fully for them too, so that they can show up for themselves and in their own life. So I've just put that into practice, because those people remind me who I really am. Like those people hold who I really am, and that praise or that sharing in that win with the people in my personal life is much more important than my colleague being either impressed or embarrassed or jealous of me moving up. Like actually, like, what does my mom think? You know, like how do the people that love me, whoever that may be to anyone, you know, sharing in that energy has helped me with that continued work of imposter syndrome, because those are the people that are going to build me up. Like those are the people who remind me why I deserve that thing. They're the people that hype me up to get that promotion and remind me, and you know, when I'm having doubt why I'm there. So
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think a lot of people in the comments I'm reading, they're like, Grace is on point. Yes, me too. So you got a lot of people that are definitely feeling it. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and give your perspective too.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Grace said. And I think, you know, just the idea of like owning and celebrating your achievements and involving your circle in that, right? Because, you know, I had to accept, and similar to Grace, and as I listened to you talk about, you know, I didn't want to tell people because I didn't want to make people feel bad. And that's kind of what I always say, because, you know, I have people in my life who are from different walks, and I love to say, and I am so fortunate to have people who have very different life experiences, right? And so I find that with certain people, like my friends who are probably like more in the corporate world or have similar type of experiences, you know, if I'm getting a promotion or something's great happening, I'll talk to them because I'm like, well, they can understand. And, you know, my friends who, you know, perhaps have a different situation, like, well, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, right? And, you know, it was a conversation with a friend one day. I'm just sort of talking and something slipped out. And she was like, oh my God, Ab, you know, I'm so proud of you. And it was in that moment where I'm like, you know, like people around you, people are in your life, right? This is a great way for you to know who's really there for you, because the people who are there for you, they're going to celebrate with you and they're going to want you to win just as much as you want them to win. You know, I think another piece for me that has really kind of helped to your question, Chanel, around how do you kind of have the two partner together, personal and work, has been through this pandemic. I think, you know, one of the things that's come through this pandemic is an opportunity to really see just how humanistic people are or can be, right? And even when you think about your colleagues. So, you know, I've got a 2.5-year-old, and I remember, even as a new mom, when I kind of went back to work, it was like, I don't want me being a new mom to be seen as a reason why I can't get, you know, certain projects, or I can't travel for work and all the things that I love to do, right? And you kind of work through that. And I know, you know, a lot of working moms have those. We have mommy guilt and we have work guilt, and we kind of battled too. And with COVID, being at home and working from home, and, you know, being in a family of people who are truly like first responders. So I'm at home, you know, with my daughter, I'm watching her and having to work. And for so long, I always kept work and home separated. I don't really talk much about what's happening at home. But when you've got a young child who is fighting for your attention while you're, you know, leading a conference call, and at one point she just gets up and she comes and she just wants to hug you as she gets on the screen. And it was a moment for me to say, you know what? All right, like this is my life right now. Like she's here, I'm delivering, nothing, no ball is dropping, right? I'm making this work, right? Productivity is up. And so it was also a time to sort of say, I'm going to take a little bit of pressure off myself, right? And integrate work and home, because this is me and this is who I am, right? And some days it's going to be messy. Some days I'm going to be on a call and I may have to say, oh, you know what? Can we wrap this up a little bit because I need to go do something. And people understand it. And I think I'm fortunate in that the company that I work for is primarily women. And so they get that. And even the men at my company, you know, they understand and they get it. And so I think without this pandemic situation and being kind of forced to work from home every single day, I don't know that I would have gotten here as quickly as I've gotten here, where I'm super comfortable in saying, oh, something about what's happening at home in a way that I would not have with my colleagues.
Yeah, and I think that really makes a lot of sense. And using the pandemic as an example, I'm sure a lot of people can relate. I think one of the things that I want to pull out from what you just said is the idea that we need to be perfect or be a perfectionist of all the things that we touch, knowing that's nearly impossible. So we're already kind of putting ourselves in a place that we can't be. Definitely as an event planner, Essence Festival alone, Candace, I can imagine like you go through so many challenges just to get to that July event. And I know the desire for it to be perfect probably comes, a mile a minute. But the reality of events are all things don't always go exactly how you planned. And so I would love to hear your perspective on being a perfectionist or expecting perfection and having to, kind of go with the flow and take the current as it comes.
Sure. I think any good event person worth their salt is really understands that something is going to go wrong. It's just my job to make sure that nobody actually attending the event really knew that happened. I think that culturally, a lot of this perfectionism and, I need to, you need to be better than everybody else in the room, and you need to be, you can't, you have to have A's, and like it's a cultural weight that we carry throughout our entire lives, that we take with us from, throughout our younger years into our professional lives. And whether, just in general, as a Black woman, whether you, wherever you come from, it is a cultural weight that we carry to be perfect, to be the top, to be the best at it, and you can't ever fail. And so that weight also is, also what they call the Black tax. It's like you are taking the energy and the weight of everything, of everyone, your family, your job, everything with you every single day. And I have to take care of it. And, I think if anything, I think self-work has taught me, and I poured into myself in understanding that I can't do it all the time. It's not always going to be perfect. And sometimes something in this, like I have 3 children, I have a full-time job, a very big job. And every now and then something is going to fall through the crack. But this work that I have put into myself, I realize that I'm doing the best that I can at what I'm doing. And I've tried to compartmentalize. Compartmentalization has been my savior, not trying to be 100% at everything all the time. Whatever I'm doing right now, I'm focused 100% on it. Like right now, I'm focused on this session. My family, don't ask me for scrambled eggs. Don't ask me to make you lunch. All of it has to wait till 4:30 till I'm done. But I'm focused right now. And the same with as I, when I do deal with work, I'll give you a really quick story. Pre-pandemic, I feel like it was January, we were doing what we call our festival upfronts. This is a time we invite all of our partners down and they hear what's coming, what's going to be, what you're going to hear for the festival for the year. And I was on stage presenting. It was like our cocktail reception. It was like the end of a few days. And I was talking to the people, thanking the heads of state. And literally I had put all of my notes in my phone to read as my speech in my phone, instead of having a piece of paper. And I'm reading my phone and the phone rings. It's my son on FaceTime. And I was like, it's ringing in the microphone. And I'm like, and so I said to the crowd, I'm so sorry, this is my son. And the crowd said, just answer it. And I didn't know what he was going to say. And I answered the phone, and he said, he's 10. And he said, Mommy, when are you coming home? And everybody was like, oh, it was like, he was like the crowd piece. It was like the perfect like segue into, I'm a real working mother. My children still want me home, but I'm going to tell you this business. We want you to partner with us and we'll see you. Of course, everything changed and we didn't have an actual live festival, but you get my point, is that life happens and you have to work and realize that I'm just a real person doing real things, and you have to juggle all of that. But sometimes Real life is going to happen and get in the way. You're going to have to be okay with that. And if you're at a place where people aren't okay with that, then maybe that's not the place for you.
Yeah, I think that's the difficult part, especially like when you just want so hard for things to go off without a hitch, or you want to do your job to the best of your ability and you don't want anything to stop that credibility. And so I know it's very difficult. But when you're thinking about how to move forward in that space, how important is it for you to one be in an environment that welcomes you to have time and space to have that time to heal with yourself or through your situation? I know a lot of people are in uncomfortable working environments, or are just are dealing with feeling stuck, especially because we're in a pandemic and nobody wants to make too many job shifts or moves right now because it's uncertain. So what advice could you give people on doubting themselves from taking another step or taking a leap of faith, or anything that could hinder them from moving forward? What advice do you have to give? And Grace, I'll let you start off on this one.
Sure. I think the first piece of advice is to remember that your value and your talent has nothing to do with where you work. It has absolutely nothing to do with the company that you work at. That's you. So like owning your narrative, owning your natural talent, your ability, that's you. You weren't born like, so this is something I kind of tell, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. There's things that I kind of tell myself or remind myself is like whatever the company is, XYZ. I wasn't born there. Like I'm not a newborn baby that was delivered at that company. Like I have a whole life experience. I have a whole work experience. Like day zero at that company is not my first day being alive. Like, and so it's like, for real. So it's like, that is you. It has nothing to do with where you work. Like your professional narrative is not, I work at XYZ company. This is what I do. This is what I'm talented at. This is where I add value. And just really owning that and understanding that you're going to take that with you at a variety of places. And maybe right now is not the best time for you to make a move. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You know what I mean? So knowing what your natural talents is, how can you apply that to where you're currently working? If it's not possible to do that, then it is a good time to pick your head up, even in this environment, because this is extraordinarily crazy times, but there's always going to be something, you know what I mean? There's always going to be something that's going to dissuade you from moving forward. I mean, if your mind works anything like mine, you could come up with a long laundry list of reasons why you shouldn't do something, but you can proactively and intentionally work through those and move forward. So I think that would be my biggest piece of advice, is owning your narrative.
I love that. I love that. We were not out the womb and into this company, so definitely you own your talents.
Yo, you guys, Grace is my hero. Anyone in the comments?
Mad
you are not a newborn. You are not a newborn delivered at the company.
Yes,
that Put that down.
Tweet it all day.
Own your narrative. That is you.
Abiola, what advice do you have in that instance?
Yeah, and I would say, and I say this, as an HR professional, as a person, this is kind of what I live by. And similarly to Grace, it's not about the company, right? Like I always make decisions on what's my value, what's valuable to me, right? And is something aligning to that? Because I think if we get caught up in the company or the role, and those are all important things, but only you can define what's important to you. And yes, we are a pandemic. On hand, it's really some people to think of move during a pandemic. But I also say that, during this time, if the right opportunity, particularly if that opportunity comes to you, right, and it's something that seems like you might be interested in, like have the conversation. Because I think, and I say this kind of jokingly, but in all seriousness, and this is conversation that I'm having with, with people around right now, let's also recognize that we are living in a place where the equity on Black talent is up, right? Particularly on Black women talent, right? And so you can change jobs during this time, right? But it has to be right for you. You have to feel comfortable that is the right next thing for you. And if you are going to do it, do not undersell yourself, right? Do not let imposter syndrome creep in and make you sell yourself short, because right now your equity is up. And just remember that, like, this is a great time for us. And so if you're going to do that, own it, know exactly what you want, define what that next thing for you is, and don't come short of it, because this is a time where it is scary, but it can also be super empowering.
Awesome. Yes, you make a great point. I think there's no better time than now. And if the opportunity definitely presents itself, don't miss out. Candace, I'll let you give your remarks too.
I really don't. I would echo what Grace and Abiola said, but I just wanted, it's not. I'm not going to unearth anything new here, but I just wanted to say, when you are, don't think that you can't do something because of a particular circumstance. You really have to figure out, does this work for me? And Abiola and Grace both said this, but it's really, you have to you're investing a lot of time at a place, whether however many hours per day you put into that place. That is a lot of energy. That is a lot of capital, personal capital that you are putting into that place. And you need to make sure that you enjoy the work that you're doing, that it's worth your time. And you are oftentimes in the driver's seat. And so, I find that, I talk to a lot of young Black women, negotiating for yourself, in terms of when you're have that opportunity to negotiate for yourself, and similar to what Abiola was saying, don't negotiate yourself short. This is an opportunity. Think of it as an opportunity. And as much as you are interviewing for a position, you are also interviewing that company to make sure that company is good for you. And I think that a lot of times we feel like we are just receiving something, or we are kind of in a secondary place in the conversation. And it is our responsibility, and again, self-work, to realize that this is not happening to you. You're an active participant, to make sure that you put yourself in a situation where you feel like, you feel good about it. Because I promise you, you're going to spend a lot of time working from home. Is not less work. And we have no idea how long we're going to be working from home, or how this is going to work. So you're spending a lot of time devoted to these organizations. Make sure it also works for you.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, thank you all so much. It has been an awesome panel. You guys have definitely dropped some gems. I know I got a couple quotes from my Instagram, LinkedIn, and definitely everybody here that's participated in the chat. Thank you guys so much for attending the Hire Black Summit. We will continue to keep the day rolling, but thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you all the wonderful ladies on the panel. We hope that you continue to connect with them on LinkedIn, and we'll see you later. Thank you.